In modern-day Ibadan, Nigeria, Arike, a beautiful 25-year-old fashion designer, led a carefree life. Known for her vibrant personality and passion for her work, she often found solace in her dog, Rex. After a long day, Arike would relax with her dog, feeling that Rex was the only one who truly understood her. One evening, Arike had a heated argument with her boyfriend, Tunde. In a fit of frustration, she decided to drink heavily. She wasn't much of a drinker, so it didn't take long before she became intoxicated. Stumbling into her bedroom, she lay down on her bed, Rex by her side as usual. The next morning, Arike woke up feeling disoriented. She looked around, expecting to see Tunde, but to her shock, Rex was unusually close to her, his body pressed against hers. She had nausea as fragments of the previous night began to come back. She remembered playing with Rex on the bed, but this time things felt different. Her heart beat fast. Her palms were sweaty as she realized something was terribly wrong. The way Rex was positioned, the memory of his unusually affectionate behavior, it all pointed to something she couldn't wrap her mind around. Tears filled her eyes as the horrifying thought crossed her mind. Did my dog sleep with me? Shaking, Arike tried to dismiss the absurdity of the situation, but a sense of fear lingered. The intimate way she felt touched the previous night was too clear to ignore. She felt ashamed, disgusted, and confused, unable to speak about it to anyone. How could she even explain such a thing? Days passed, and the unsettling feeling refused to leave her. Arike's guilt weighed heavily on her, but she buried the memory, hoping it was just a figment of her imagination. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a terrifying journey that would soon turn her life upside down. Several weeks later, Arike began feeling nauseous and unusually tired. At first, she thought it was just the aftermath of her heavy drinking. But as the days turned into weeks, she noticed her body changing. The symptoms were all too familiar. She was pregnant. Arike couldn't believe it. She and Tunde hadn't been intimate in weeks, and she had been careful with birth control. The thought of Rex crept back into her mind, making her stomach churn. Could it be? She dismissed the thought as ridiculous, but the nagging fear refused to leave. She scheduled an appointment with her doctor, who confirmed her pregnant. While most women might have been filled with joy at such news, Arike was horrified. Her mind raced back to the fateful night. Could this pregnancy be as a result of her dog? As the days went by, she became consumed by the guilt and confusion. Tunde, noticing her distant behavior, questioned her several times, but she kept quiet. How could she tell him the truth? He would never believe her, and worse, he would be disgusted. The weeks passed slowly, and Arike became increasingly paranoid. She avoided looking at Rex, feeling a mix of disgust and shame every time she saw him. What if the baby she was carrying was not fully human? The thought haunted her day and night. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every passing day was a reminder of the nightmare she was living. As her belly grew, so did her fear. She had no one to talk to. No one would understand her. She was trapped in her own mind, carrying a secret so dark it felt like a curse. 9 months later, Arike gave birth to a baby boy, whom she named Eniola. When the nurse placed the baby in her arms, she loved the baby, but it was quickly replaced by fear. Eniola looked normal at first glance, a healthy baby boy, but something felt off. His eyes seemed sharper, more animalistic than a newborn's should be. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine, though Arike remained on edge. However, it wasn't long before she began to notice strange behaviors in Eniola. Unlike other babies who cried for attention, Eniola barked. It wasn't a baby's wail. It was a sound eerily similar to a dog's bark. Arike's heart dropped at the first time she heard it. She tried to ignore it, dismissing it as a strange coincidence. But as time passed, Eniola's dog-like behaviors became more pronounced. He crawled on all fours, sniffed his food before eating, and even wagged his body like a dog when he was excited. By the time Eniola was 1 year old, Arike knew something was terribly wrong. She couldn't take him out in public for fear that people would notice his strange behaviors. Even Tunde, who had initially been excited about their son, started to distance himself, sensing something wasn't right. Arike was tormented by guilt and shame. Every time Eniola barked or sniffed around like a dog, she was reminded of that dreadful night. She couldn't bear the thought of what had happened, but she also couldn't ignore the evidence. Her son wasn't behaving like a normal human child. Desperate for answers, Arike knew she had to do something before the situation got worse. The more she thought about it, the more she realized this was beyond the realm of medical science. There had to be a spiritual explanation for what was happening to her son. Unable to cope with Eniola's worsening behaviors, Arike decided to seek spiritual help. She had heard about Babalawo, a renowned Yoruba spiritual leader known for his deep knowledge of the mystical world. With a heavy heart and a sense of desperation, she made her way to his compound in the outskirts of Ibadan. The Babalawo welcomed her with a calm demeanor, his deep-set eyes giving the impression that he already knew why she had come. Without Arike uttering a word, he asked, "You seek answers about your child, don't you?" Trembling, Arike nodded. She explained everything, her pregnancy, the strange behavior of her son, and the unthinkable events with Rex that haunted her. Babalawo listened quietly, nodding occasionally, but his expression remained unreadable. After she finished speaking, he sat in silence for a moment before speaking. "You had an encounter with Okere," he said, his voice low but serious. Okere is a shape-shifting dog spirit from Yoruba mythology. He can take the form of a dog and deceive those who are unaware. Arike's heart sank. "Okere, a spirit?" she asked, her voice shaky. Babalawo nodded. "Yes, Okere often disguises himself as a regular dog, and in moments of vulnerability, he takes advantage of unsuspecting individuals. The night you speak of, it wasn't your dog Rex who lay with you, it was Okere." Arike felt her stomach churn with a mix of disbelief and horror. She had heard of shapeshifters in Yoruba folklore, but she never imagined such things could be real. Yet, the evidence was right in front of her. Eniola's strange behaviors could not be explained any other way. "But what can I do? How can I help my son?" Arike asked, her voice breaking. Babalawo looked deeply into Arike's eyes before he spoke again. "To break this curse, you must perform an ancient ritual. It is not an easy one, but it is the only way to save your child from living as half human, half dog." Arike's heart raced as she listened intently. The thought of performing a ritual scared her, but she knew she had no choice. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear and desperation. "The ritual requires three rare and powerful ingredients," Babalawo began. "First, you must retrieve a moonstone from the Oyo Palace. It's a sacred stone that can only be obtained under the full moon. Second, you need dogonyaro leaves from the Oshun Oshobo sacred grove. These leaves hold the power to cleanse the spirit of any shape-shifting curse. Lastly, you must gather the tears of the Orisha Iya, the goddess of winds and storms." Arike's mind spun at the enormity of the task. How could she possibly gather these items? The Oyo Palace was heavily guarded. The Oshun Sacred Grove was a revered site where access was restricted, and obtaining the tears of a powerful Orisha seemed like an impossible feat. She voiced her concerns, but the Babalawo remained calm. "The journey will be difficult, but with determination and the right guidance, you will find what you need." Feeling overwhelmed, Arike stood up, ready to leave, when Babalawo stopped her. "One more thing," he added. "Time is of essence. If the cross isn't broken before your son turns 5, he will be lost to Okere's influence forever, and no ritual will reverse it." Arike's blood ran cold. Eniola was already 2 years old. She had only 3 years to complete this near impossible task. With heavy heart, she left Babalawo, determined to save her son at all costs. Arike wasted no time. She made her way to the Oyo Palace first, knowing that retrieving the moonstone was the most time-sensitive task. The full moon was approaching in a few days, and she couldn't afford to miss the chance. As she approached the Grand Palace, her heart pounded in her chest. The palace was heavily guarded, and outsiders were not allowed into the sacred areas where the moonstone was kept. But Arike had a plan. She disguised herself as a palace servant, blending in with the workers. For 2 days, she quietly observed the palace layout, waiting for the night of the full moon. When the night finally arrived, Arike slipped away from her duties and made her way to the palace courtyard where the sacred moonstone lay hidden. The courtyard was bathed in moonlight, and the moonstone glowed faintly in the center. Arike crept forward, her eyes scanning the area for any guards. Just as she reached the stone, she heard footsteps behind her. Panicking, she quickly grabbed the moonstone and hid behind a nearby pillar, holding her breath as a guard passed by. Once the coast was clear, she hurried back to her room, clutching the stone tightly in her hands. Relieved, but she knew her journey was far from over. The next task would take her deep into the Oshun Oshogbo sacred grove, a place filled with ancient spirits and mysteries. The following morning, Arike set off for Oshogbo. The journey was long and exhausting, but she pressed on, determined to gather the dogon leaves as she approached the sacred grove. She felt the spirit watching her, but she knew there was no turning back. She had to complete this task for Eniola's sake. The Oshogbo Sacred Grove was a place of reverence and beauty, with towering trees and shimmering streams. Arike could feel the presence of the Orisha Oshun, the goddess of fertility and the protector of the grove. But despite the serene surroundings, Arike was on edge. The task ahead of her was dangerous, and she had no idea how she would find the Dogon leaves. As she ventured deeper into the grove, the air became thick with the energy of ancient spirit. Every step she took felt heavier, as though unseen eyes were watching her every move. She had been warned that the spirits of the grove were not so kind to outsiders, especially those who sought to take something from their sacred land. After hours of searching, Arike finally stumbled upon the tree she had been looking for, the Dogon tree. Its large leaves glistened in the dim light and filtered through the canopy. She reached out to pluck a handful of leaves when a gust of wind swept through the grove, knocking her to the ground. Before we continue our story, hit the subscribe button right now, please, and turn on post notifications so that whenever we make a post, you'll be the first to get notified. Please subscribe before we continue our story. Have you subscribed? Let's continue. Arike looked up to see an elderly woman standing before her. The woman's eyes were sharp, and her presence felt otherworldly. "What do you seek in this sacred place?" the woman asked her with authority. Arike trembled, but managed to explain to her the quest to break the curse on her son. The woman listened carefully before nodding slowly. "You are brave to come here, child, but know this. Taking from the grove comes with a price. If you wish to have these leaves, you must offer something in return." Arike's heart sank. She had nothing to offer but her own determination. "I have nothing to give," she admitted, her voice trembling. The woman smiled gently. "Your love for your son is offering enough," she said. "Take the leaves, but remember that the spirit will be watching over you. Do not fail in your task." With that, the woman vanished, leaving Arike alone with the Dogon leaves in hand. She felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. One more task remained, and it was the most impossible of all. Arike had gotten the moonstone and the Dogon leaves, but now she was faced with her greatest challenge, obtaining the tears of Orisha Oya. The Orisha of winds and storms, Oya, was a powerful and fearsome deity. Her tears were said to be as rare as they were dangerous to obtain, for they only fell during the most violent storms. Weeks passed, and Arike found herself praying daily for a storm to come. Every night she gazed at the sky, hoping to see dark clouds gather, but the skies remained clear. Time was slipping away, and Arike's hope began to dwindle. Eniola's fifth birthday was fast approaching, and with each passing day, its behaviors grew more dog-like. He barked constantly now, and Arike could barely recognize her son as human anymore. One evening, just as Arike was beginning to lose faith, the winds picked up. Dark clouds rolled in, and the sky turned an ominous shade of grey. A storm was coming, and with it, Arike's final chance to gather Oya's tears. She rushed outside, her heart pounding in anticipation. The wind wiped through the trees, and the heavens opened up with torrential rain. Thunder roared, and lightning split the sky, but Arike stood firm. She raised her hands to the sky, shouting Oya's name, begging the Orisha to hear her plea. As the storm intensified, Arike was thrown to the ground by the force of the wind. But through the chaos, she saw something miraculous. a single tear, glowing with divine light, fell from the storm clouds above. It landed gently on the ground before her, shimmering with the power of the Orisha. Tears of relief streamed down Arike's face as she gathered the precious tear into a vial. She had done it. She had gathered all the ingredients for the ritual. Now, all that remained was to return to Babalawo and save her son. With all the ingredients in hand, Arike wasted no time returning to Babalawo's compound. As she entered his home, the Babalawo greeted her with a knowing smile. "You have done well," he said, his voice filled with respect. "Now we must perform the ritual to break the curse." Arike handed him the moonstone, dogonyaro leaves, and the vial containing Oya's tear. Babalawo carefully prepared the ritual space, marking sacred symbols on the ground and lighting incense to purify the air. He instructed Arike to stand in the center of the circle, holding Eniola in her arms. As the ritual began, Babalawo chanted ancient incantations in a language Arike couldn't understand. The air around grew thick with spiritual energy, and Arike could feel the presence of the Orishas surrounding them. Her heart raced as she held Eniola close, praying for the curse to be lifted. The Babalawo took the moonstone and placed it on Eniola's forehead, then sprinkled the dogonyaro leaves over his body. Finally, he poured a drop of tear into Eniola's mouth. The moment the tear touched his lips, the wind outside began to howl, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Arike watched in awe as Eniola's body glowed with a soft, warm light. Slowly, his dog-like behaviors began to fade. He stopped barking, his limbs relaxed, and his movement became more human-like. For the first time in years, Arike saw her son as he was meant to be, a healthy, normal boy. Tears of joy streamed down her face as she hugged Eniola tightly. The curse was broken. She had saved her son. The days following the ritual were filled with relief and joy. Eniola had finally returned to his human self, and the strange dog-like behaviors were gone for good. Arike was overwhelmed with gratitude for Babalawo, who had guided her through the most difficult journey of her life. But as life returned to normal, Arike couldn't shake the memories of what had happened. The experience had changed her, made her more aware of the mystical forces that existed in the world. She could never look at the ordinary world in the same way again, knowing that there were ancient spirits and curses lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. Arike also knew she would never fully forget what had happened with Rex. Though the dog was no longer in her life, the memory of the night still haunted her, but she had learned a valuable lesson. Not all things were as they seem, and the spiritual world was not to be taken lightly. As Eniola grew older, Arike remained protective of him, always keeping a close eye on his development. He was a bright, happy child, and though he had no memory of his early years under the curse, Arike never forgot the length she had gone in order to save him. In time, Arike found peace. She continued her work as a fashion designer, but she also became known in her community as a woman who had faced the impossible and triumphed. Mothers came to her for advice, and she spoke openly about the power of love and determination in the face of unimaginable odds. As she looked at her son, playing happily in the yard, Arike knew that she had been given a second chance. And though her journey had been filled with fear, pain, and uncertainty, it had also been a journey of hope and redemption. All right, so what did you learn from this story? Share it in the comment section. And please subscribe to this channel right now and turn on post notification so that whenever a story is posted, you'll be the first to get notified and you'll be the first to watch. Like and share this. Don't forget to drop your lessons in the comment section. Subscribe and see you in our next story. Bye-bye.